Good evening and welcome to the Monday night edition of the People Show with your host and facilitator, Mark Wallace, here with you every Monday night here on intellectualradio.com. Thank you all for tuning in. I want to immediately ask for you all. I'm going to tell you a little bit later on. We have just launched our new The People's Show Facebook page. So please go there to our new fan page there. Follow us there. Send your friends there to follow us. We are going to, we have a new producer who is working with us now, and I'll be introducing her to you sometime later, but she is our social media, I should say, producer, who is going to be helping us in terms of increasing our viewership, increasing our listenership. So we have retained her to do that. So she will be helping us with that. We're going to get into the program in just a few minutes. We have some guests who are going to be coming on to talk with us about the signal chat fallout and what that means. So I'm bringing on some people who are in the military, some military experts who are going to talk to us about that to help us to understand just what that means and the seriousness of it. The seriousness of it to people who are in combat, people who are in the field, what it could have meant for those people who were actually involved in the missions that were taking place, and just how serious this is, even though Donald Trump has said that he is not going to discipline anyone. He's not going to ask anybody to resign. He's not going to terminate anybody in this situation. And the Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, says that they are not going to open an investigation. Now, keep in mind, there was an investigation and there was an all-out launch of an investigation on Hillary Clinton when she used an unsecured private server to send emails, classified information out over emails. As well, that investigation should have taken place. Hillary Clinton sat for 11 hours before Senate taking questions and answering questions related to that. Here we have something that I believe is as equivalent or even more so because lives were put at risk. And this was information that went out that someone who had been included in a highly sensitive conversation that should not have been included. And this kind of mistake should not have been made. They actually have training that they go through. It is this rigorous training that staffers and people who have highly sensitive positions within the government, certainly within administrations, go through to prevent such things from happening. And so we're going to be talking about that. I'm going to talk about that with my guest. I want to give you a little bit of background about that. Also, later on in the program, in the 8 o'clock hour, we're going to talk about our mayor, the mayor of the city of Chicago, Brandon Johnson. And he had a listening session at the Trinity United Church of Christ this past weekend. I've got some clips of that we're going to play during the 8 o'clock hour. And we're going to talk about the question that I'm going to raise to you. Can we criticize? Can we question? Can we challenge our mayor or our public representatives and still support them? There seems to be this distortion that because you hold a person in public office accountable, or you require answers, or you're critical of certain policies, that somehow you are against that particular person. And in this case, we're talking about the mayor. I can support the mayor, but I can certainly question certain policies that the mayor is putting forth, such as I do. And we're going to talk about that coming up in the 8 o'clock hour. So I want to make sure that you tune in for that. And we're going to take some of your calls about that. But I think it's very important. Harold Washington, who certainly was my mentor. Now, when I say he's my mentor, I never met the man. I think I've only been in the room one time during the campaign when he was running for his second time in office, because I moved to Chicago when he was in the middle of his first term. So I never had a chance to meet him, but he did come by our church, and I voted for him in 1987 when he ran for his second term. I moved to Chicago in 1985. So, and watched this man, and I was, like many other people, I were completely captivated by him, his leadership, and his service. And certainly, I share his philosophical approach to government and his philosophical approach to governing. And so he is somebody that I try to pattern myself as an advocate for making changes in improving and advancing things for the community and for the city, and for all of our people, certainly in particular the African American community on the south and west sides of Chicago and Cook County, and in the region. One of the things that he said that you ought to always ask critical questions of your representatives. This came from the mayor, that you should always question what they're doing. That is our reasonable responsibilities as citizens, to be engaged. This is not a spectator sport. This is not a time for us to sit on the sideline, and certainly not a time to be in despair. You have to be engaged, and you have to be a part of the process, holding the people that we elect to public office to govern accountable, to deliver the services that we pay dearly in taxes for them to do. Now, governing is not an easy thing. Nobody is saying that it's easy. That's why it takes all of us to be involved, because certainly the representatives can't see everything. They can't know everything. And the more of us who are engaged to help them to understand what the concerns are from the community, and certainly the things that they see, then they could go back to their respective bodies and collaborate with their colleagues to try to advance policies that will address issues. Now, none of this stuff happens with a broad paintbrush, and none of this happens overnight. So it takes all of us to be engaged in the process in order for us to influence change and to bring about change that's going to be for the better. Now let's get into tonight's conversation. Our first hour, I have two great guests who are going to be joining me in just a few minutes. Kevin Dorsey, who is also a candidate for trustee in the village of Flossmoor. He is a retired United States Navy Command Master Chief with 28 years of highly decorated military service. During his military career, he was an instrumental part of building fleet hospitals for the treatment, care of military personnel serving in combat zones. He is joining us as my guest, and U.S. Navy veteran, Syron Smith. Both are joining me here for this conversation. I want to welcome them both to the program. Sy and Kevin Dorsey, welcome to the program. Thank you all for being here.
Sure thing. Hey,
All right, Mark, you're fancy here, I see.
All right. So listen, I want to get right into this. Kevin, I know that you have limited time, so I want to get right into this. Sure. Kevin Dorsey, again, is running for a trustee out in the village of Flossmoor. We, along with my organization, 10 by 10 to Win, wholeheartedly supports his candidacy for the trustee in the village of Flossmoor. So if you can get out there and support them, do whatever you can, even chip in a few dollars to support the campaign. That election is on April the 1st, and we're supporting a whole slate of candidates out there in the village of Flossmoor. I want to get into this conversation because this is you guys are military people. I've never been in the military. My father served in the Navy. My brother was in the Navy, and both of you are retired United States Navy service people. Kevin, you were served in a senior capacity as a Navy Command Master Chief, and Sy, you were in the U.S. Navy as a veteran and retired. I want to ask the both of you, for the listening audience. I'm going to start with you, Kevin. What your thoughts were when you heard about the fallout with this communication, where they had included the chief editor from the Atlantic on this signal chat, which was an unsecured signal chat that they were having very sensitive conversations about planning an attack out in Yemen. What are your thoughts, and what were your thoughts when you heard what had taken place?
The first thing that came to my mind, Mark, was there any loss of our military personnel? Right. I mean, as a command master chief, you always think about your troops. You think about the safety of your troops. So when I learned that the mission was successful and that we had no American military casualties, that at least gave me a sigh of relief. But then when all of the commentary came out concerning, oh, this wasn't classified information, and no one was put in harm's way, and knowing the type of information that was actually being transmitted. When you talk about a mission, when you talk about weaponry that's being used, when you talk about the strikes and the destination of the strikes and the timing of the strike, there is nothing more classified than that. So, I think what the military people, what us veterans, us retired individuals, those that have served and those that are continuing to serve, what they're looking for most of all in their leadership is trust and accountability. That's what they demand of us. They demand that we have to be accountable for the things that we do. So when we duck behind words and thinking that the American people are ignorant and aren't going to understand the type of information that was put out there, and then when you also do that to the military people, the military personnel, you putting yourself in a position where you've lost accountability, and when you lose accountability, you lose trust. So that was really most concerning to me, that this was an opportunity for them to say, yeah, this was a mistake. And these are the actions we're going to take because of this error occurred, up to and including somebody has to lose their job if that's what's appropriate. Because I'm certain, so I can even attest to this, if it was one of us, right? If it was an enlisted individual or a junior officer, or even a high-ranking officer, that person would have lost their job. There would have been no, we're not going to do an investigation. There would have been no denying it and covering up. That person would have lost their job. So I think when we have different standards based upon who's leading the country, and I'm really disappointed in Hexteth. He actually was former military. We're supposed to have an allegiance to ourselves. I used to tell my commanding officer, yeah, I may report to you, but I'm here for my troops. And let's not forget that line, and the line of me being here for my troops is the line that I'm actually going to bear witness to every time. And if we can find a happy median to that, we're fine. But in this case, all the doubling down and drawing a line in the sand and the blatant lies is what's, even outside of what you did, and you should have known better to use signal. But even outside of that, just the blatant lies and cover up to it, just, it eludes any trust and accountability for those who are actually in this position. And it's like they aren't considering the troops that we're putting out there in harm's way.
Sy?
Well, I want to first just say hats off to you, Mr. Dorsey, being as high ranking as you are. Salute to you.
Thank you.
Mark, I wasn't surprised. I would say that because unfortunately we have a lot of men of that hue who are very arrogant and egotistical. And when you feel like you can't do no wrong, then you operate without the attention to detail that you would do if you was humble, grateful, things of that nature. So I wasn't surprised. I say that. I was disappointed, of course, because I don't like putting our military in a bad light, especially the leadership. But the word I would say is the competence. It makes you question things that you shouldn't question about the leadership. And so that's what came to my mind when that SHIT show was going down.
Well, let's talk about competency. Every senior official, every cabinet member goes through a Senate hearing. They go through many meetings. Traditionally, they go through many meetings with the different members of the Senate. There's 100 members of the Senate. Most times they meet with them, sometimes privately, sometimes in small groups, but they meet with them, and they go through their own personal interviews before they actually go through the Senate hearing process. There were many questions raised about the competency of Pete Hegseth, notwithstanding the Trump administration, but there were allegations about his alcoholism, his lack of discipline, certainly his lack of character and poor judgment in terms of how he handled his own personal life, which all plays a role in you having, or from what has been reported and what has been said in the military, when you're in a high-ranking position, all these things matter, because how you live your life directly reflects how you would be as a leader of a command and commanding troops in the military, and as such high sensitive positions at this. And you are responsible for thousands of men and women in combat, in these private or these secret missions. I mean, your role, those of us as civilians have no idea of the sensitivity of the importance of having a person in command who is someone that you can know and trust that they've got your back when you're out there in the line of fire. But there were lots of red flags that says that this person who was picked to head the Pentagon should not be that person. And to show this kind of lapse in judgment, serious lapse in judgment about a combat mission, thank God that none of the Navy pilots were not blown out of the air.
Yeah, I agree. Any question of your judgment, anything that impairs your judgment, definitely is something that should be considered when you put an individual in a job as serious as the defense secretary, right? When you put an individual in that role, and there's a question that comes up whether those concerns of his drinking still exist. And it's like having someone with their finger on the button that at any moment they could be called into action. And you have to question what the state of mind is that they're prepared for that type of action. This actually is an example of, what were you thinking? Because if you just think about the simple process of this, there's 5 or 6 people on the call, the vice president, what was the CIA director, Ratcliffe, and
no, there were 18 people on this.
Right. So
there were 18 people, just about everybody in the senior officials.
So even at 18, in my current job, I hold conference calls with double the amount, and we're discussing contracts and money, not really lives. And we held to a standard of this has to be done in our secure portal, because it might even be some patient information, some secured information. So we have to do it in a secure portal. If there's anyone that dials in on a non-secure with a phone number, we immediately find out who that individual is and we tell them to sign it in a secure line. So if we can do that when we're talking just revenue, I am absolutely certain, even outside, that they shouldn't have been on Signal in the first place, knowing that doesn't have that same level of security, right? I'm absolutely sure that there's someone should have been doing a simple roll call before we discuss this information on a platform that we shouldn't be discussing it on. How simple is it to just do a basic roll call to see who we have on the line? So it brings to question of not only if this is a first time incident, right? Has it happened before? But what were they thinking in the first place of talking of this level of secured information in this platform and no one even running a secure roll call to see, hey, who all are we talking with? That's just, it's basic to me. And that's what's baffling, because there's some hard stuff we have to do in the military. This isn't one of them. This was something that could have been simply taken care of with, even, first of all, not being on Signal. You know that wasn't a place to have it. But even if you made the error, let's make sure that the right people are on the call, especially when you're talking about a couple of dozen at max. It's very simple.
Well, first of all, they were not supposed to be on Signal Chat because of the Presidential Preservation Act. All conversations and everything that they do belongs to the government, and they were in violation of the Constitution by even trying to have that. This was a deliberate decision that they made so that they would not have to have a record of what took place. So there were violations of the Constitution and violations of the law. Sy, how do you see that?
It goes back to the cockiness, the arrogance that I can do what I want because I can talk louder than you. I can chastise you if you ask questions, therefore you will back down. And this, we would have to look and see, do they own stocks in the Signal? Because that could be it too, that they put business over the government. So I just go back to what I said. To me, the bigger issue is the people on that side of the aisle not holding them accountable. Of course, we know the Democratic side wants hearings, but when you allow that, if anything happened to the troops and you had an opportunity to deal with it and you didn't, that's blood on your hands. So I question all those lawmakers that's on the side with the president to really get to the bottom of this and remove people if they're not taking it serious enough.
Well, I heard other high-ranking retired military experts who said that under any other circumstances, for something like this to take place, a person in the military would be brought up on charges, court-martial, and thrown out of the military
Immediately.
So
there's this double standard.
They are treating this as though somebody, misplaced a can of fruit of something, when in fact we still don't know whether or not the enemies have information that they're using right now to plan to use against our military men and women who are out there. Even our CIA members who are out, on missions throughout the country. We have no idea how much information that they may have currently, even though nothing happened during that mission. It doesn't mean that the secure information didn't get out to the enemies. How would we know that, especially them being on the unsecured Signal Chat?
Mark, I would say this though, even if you're our adversary and you see how they're conducting business, you have to feel a little bit better about your position, because you're dealing with people who are not on top of their game as much, if you will. So I think the confidence that was that was killed with a lot of people, even our adversary, even the military men and women, the CIA operatives operating. How confident can you be serving this type of leadership when something as basic as Mr. Dorsey said isn't done as a roll call just to verify who's who on the call.
And the opposite of that is our NATO allies, right? How confident are they in our, I mean, we're the head of NATO. How confident are they in the alliance they have with us if we're making these type of errors? Look, there is and then the cover up behind it. I think we owe it to our fighting men and women. We owe it to our ally nations to at least be honest, to at least admit to the flaw, right? But when you talk about heads rolling, who would he fire, right? Which one would he line up as the sacrificial lamb? I mean, would it be Hess? I mean, that was his pick. That's who he fought to get confirmed. So now am I going to admit that, hey, I was wrong. I shouldn't have put him forward. And yes, the amount of question that he had throughout his confirmation hearings, those were legitimate. Who would he fire? I mean, it takes someone with a sense of humanity to, first of all, admit that they were wrong. And we've all made mistakes. This is a huge one. The only saving grace to this is that there was no American troops that were lost.
Yeah.
But our president would have to stand against individuals that he's actually handpicked and put before the confirmation hearings and say, hey, I was wrong. Maybe you were right about this person. And I just don't think that's the character that he has. This does require, though, if not based upon this one incident is one thing, but they want to make this a standalone incident. They want to do deflections of, well, this is what happened with Hillary and this is what happened under the Democrats. And I'm not being, Democratic or Republican in either of these. But if we've had examples of what shouldn't have happened, the current administration should be doing better, right? It's one thing to point the finger of what has done in the past, but those are examples of that we can use now to make sure, hey, we're going to do better. We're going to put in better checks and balances instead of deflecting the blame elsewhere. There's no one that's going to be fired here unless there's continued heat, because the only way that, our president isn't going to look bad himself. If he has to sacrifice someone in order to save him from looking bad, he will. But literally in this case, this is something that could have easily been this was your watch. This is what would have happened under any other, level of military personnel. And yes, it should happen under you. Not to make an example of someone, but actually to set the stage that there is no double standard. If we expect this from our men and women that are out there serving every day, yes, we should expect the exact same competence of those that are at the top of our defense branches. This is baffling to me of why this conversation is even having to happen, because under any other circumstance, actions would have been taken. Why not investigate to make sure that this is something that hasn't happened in the past? Why not investigate to make sure that we have the right protocols in place, which we do? This shouldn't have happened. There are protocols in place for this type of information. There are secured rooms that you go into if you're in person, and you leave your cell phone out. They make sure you don't even bring your cell phone into that room. There are other alternatives to having this type of messaging out there without putting it on an unsecure website. This really needs to be investigated. And I'm not a doomsday theorist, but I really believe that we'll never see an investigation on this.
Well, this is just as serious to me, and it shows the lack of judgment of even and the ability to lead in Donald Trump. He is showing the same arrogance and neglect in this that he demonstrated in COVID. We probably lost 3 times as many people because of his inability to tell us what we were being faced with COVID. Mm-hmm. If he had just managed COVID without better than, because he didn't want to, he wanted to play it down. He didn't want to look weak, but he put the rest of us at risk, and we lost over 1 million lives. That if he had come out and say, look, we are potentially facing something catastrophic, a pandemic. I am suggesting that all of us put masks on to protect ourselves from spreading this if we had it, and we could have mitigated it. Not to say that we would have stopped every death. Of course, that probably would not have been, but certainly we did not have to lose as many people, because what it did was it sent people out to thinking that you didn't need to do anything. Yeah. And we lost well over 1 million people and are still losing people. So this to me is tantamount to the lack of judgment that this person has, that we have occupying the White House at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
Now, Mark, what about this though? Because I love to go back to Congress on that side, in particular, how they've cowed down and allow a person to be in control and dominate. And as with anything, you should be okay with being challenged. Like you said before the show started, you should be able to disagree and not disconnect. Me and my wife don't agree on everything, but we still run the household. And so for our elected officials to be okay with someone, any president doing whatever they want, it's the separation of the branches. That's the whole purpose of it, is checks and balances. So I think it's a failure on his part as the leader, but also on Congress that shields and protects and won't even investigate.
Well, I absolutely agree. I think that Congress is abdicating its duty and its sworn oath to defend and protect the Constitution. And certainly this is Congress's responsibility, is to hold the executive office in check. And whether you're a Democrat, Republican, whatever label you fly under, it doesn't matter when it comes to protecting and defending the Constitution. Whatever label you fall under, if you're a Democrat, if you're an independent, if you're a Republican, if you fail to carry out your sworn oath, you should be held in check. And that's what Congress's responsibility is. And so Congress is also abdicating their responsibility.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yep. Totally.
Yeah. So it you know, for the average person, and I get to thinking about men and women right now who are somewhere in the world defending our Constitution, somewhere in the world right now, putting their lives at risk. And here we have the commanders back here that are in a cavalier position in not protecting or defending those men and women who are out there at this very moment. What does that do for the morale? What would you say that would do for the morale?
I think it's anytime you're aboard ship, you know, or anytime I was Fleet Marine Force and Naval Search and Rescue. Anytime you're even in a training mission, you're always on a heightened alert, because you know, on any given moment, you can go from a training mission to an active mission. Right? So you live in this constant state of anything can happen at any given moment. In order to be prepared for that, you have to have confidence in your leadership. You have to have trust in your leadership. When that trust is eroded, even slightly, even if the individual doesn't think so themselves, it does affect your preparedness. It does affect your readiness, because now you have to think, even if it's subconsciously, you have to think, is the mission I'm going on a well thought, well planned, and in this case, a classified mission, or am I walking into an ambush, right? So I think even that our toughest, our brightest military men and women, if we put them in a position where I can see how a breach like this could do so, if we put them in a position where it actually questions the trust, the accountability, and the competence of those who are actually calling them forward for a mission, it does affect that mission preparedness. It does affect that mission readiness. Look, our men and women who serve are going to do. I tell people I never said no to a set of orders, right? And we can't. We get a set of orders, we go. But I can't imagine questioning even more, because automatic is like, okay, these orders, do I get back home to my family, right? But the question, man, are these orders well thought out? Are they well planned? And have the individuals that's calling us to do these orders, have they put us in the best possible scenario to have a successful mission? Luckily the timing of what happened here, there was no lives lost, but I think even what we're having to discuss, it kind of tarnishes the success of the mission that these men and women executed.
Yeah. And think about this too, Mark. Now, I was going to say, think about recruiting over the next couple of years. How many people will want to join, or they may just wait it out to the next administration.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and we constantly need to, and of course, our military is a volunteer military, and we need people to volunteer to be involved in our military to provide very important support. And on so many levels, this brings a lack of integrity, right? It's a lack of integrity over our military, which we hold up as such high regards, right? As the greatest military in the world, that the rest of the world looks to for support. I mean, we spend more on our military than the next 25 of members of the developed world. So they look to us for support. And so to let this go and to be even politicized compromises the integrity of the entire military.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Who was it that called was it Waltz who called the journalist Goldberg a loser? And I thought,
yeah. It was actually Pete Hegseth, but it was Michael Waltz who enjoined Jeffrey Goldberg from the Atlantic into this chat. But Jeffrey Goldberg, who removed himself from the chat and did not release even some of the highly sensitive information that was in there. So he was being more responsible as a journalist and a citizen than the people who swore to an oath and were given these positions, these highly classified, highly sensitive positions. He showed more character as a journalist and forget about a journalist, but certainly as a citizen than they did in their positions.
I don't use the word lightly, but literally when I thought about the actions that he took, I'm like, well, that's the sign of a patriot. And then I countered that with, we have, these individuals that, the insurrectionists on the Capitol, that they're convicted and we pardon them and we hold them up to some type of additional standard. And even the organization that they belong to, the Proud Boys, we call them patriots. But this journalist who literally realized that I shouldn't be on here took really responsible and, in my view, patriotic action of not using this for any personal gain or not having I want to expose this and go after someone with some type of malicious intent. I thought, how responsible of this individual to act in this way, and then to be pointed out as if they did something wrong. They didn't hack the signal. They didn't join on their own. They were actually allowed into this mistakenly. So all this diversion, all this denying and this diversion and deflecting, it hurts not only the nation, but in this case, it definitely hurts the trust and the accountability that our men and women who serve will have towards this leadership.
Yeah, and then they of course, they wanted to berate him as some sort of opportunist and calling it a witch hunt, calling it a hoax. And we're talking about our military.
Yeah,
we're talking about our military. We're talking about men and women, thousands of people who are across, this world that die in secret, and we will never know their names because they are giving their service and their time to defend our freedoms.
Mm-hmm.
And you have the president and these people who don't even have the character to say, you know what, we screwed up, and the preservation of the military is much more important than me being in this position, right? I mean, if you're talking about patriotism, right, and I have my own issues with that, but if you're talking about somebody who says that they are patriotic, if you're patriotic, and then you put the country and everything it stands for far before you put yourself
or any other individual,
or any other individual,
right,
for that matter.
Right.
So, what do you see? What do you think? And Sy, you alluded to it about people coming in, but what about people who are having to go out on other missions? This would have to be in the back of their mind as, what do our enemies know that we don't know that they know as a result of this breakdown? And just because they got caught this one time doesn't mean that they weren't doing other things and being as reckless in other areas of handling sensitive information in these positions.
It goes back to that confidence. If I'm going out, I'm worried now, I'm concerned now. What else? What if that came to the surface? What has not come to the surface? And it also emboldens the enemy, because again, they can be laughing at us saying, "Oh wow, they can't get that right. What else is not as on square?" And so I think it just a total collapse in confidence. That's all.
Yeah, how do we shore that up though? Right? I mean, and I think one way of doing it is having not a investigation by individuals that's just going to find what the administration wants them to find, but having a true realistic investigation so that you can at least, say to the men and women, hey, this is what we found, or there was nothing else to be found. I think that doesn't even give you 100% certainty as a fighting, men and women nowadays, but to say nothing or to deny is far worse.
Yep.
I think this really does call for an investigation, not only to look at what has happened here, but to try and restore some type of trust, to try and restore some type of confidence in the men and women that are still going to have to execute missions. For all we know, there's a potential mission that's being executed right now as we're having this conversation. But anything that we can provide to them, any honest thing, not again something that's going to deflect and deny or give you partial truths. Any honest thing that we can provide that says, we've investigated this, this is what we found, this is what we put in place for a fix, and this is what we promise you as we secure your missions and your service for the country. But what we're providing them now, it doesn't supply any of that. It doesn't get any of that level of confidence.
You know, I thought about this too. Think about people who may be getting ready to go on captain's mast, or they're in trouble for something far less. Can you imagine what's going to be said if they be held accountable and the top-notch leadership isn't held accountable? I think that's going to and Mr. Dorsey, you hit it from a racial perspective in the military. I guarantee you the black members, service members, know that they better not even come 1/3 of guilty of doing anything like that, because they know they'll be made the example out of. So I think that's a wedge also in this whole thing, is black saying that these people are getting away with it mainly because of their skin color.
Absolutely.
Well, you know, even beyond that, as citizens, right? Even beyond that, as citizens, because of their whiteness or whatever, they are putting the entire national security of the United States of America and the world, for that matter, at serious risk. They fired the inspectors general before, so there's really no person to do an investigation or agency to do the investigation, because those people have been dismissed. Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, says that there's no need for them to open any type of an investigation. So then what you have here is you have a breach that is going to go unchecked. And because you have a breach that is going to go unchecked, that means that there is always this hole in a part of our government that has no answers. I don't think that I've ever witnessed anything as that did not have an investigation to where they can say, we investigated this, this is what we found, and there was no further breach, there was no further information that got out to our enemies that shouldn't have got out, or they found that there was some other information that got out, even if they didn't tell us this, because it's so sensitive that they need to make sure that they preserve that. But to have no investigation or no accountability is to send to the rest of us that we are at serious peril and we're at serious risk.
Absolutely. And it leads you to believe that this was deliberate, right? That this was deliberate and this wasn't isolated. That yes, you know, we're using this platform because we don't want a record of this discussion, right? And look, we have an administration that has no issues with breaking the rules, has no issues with acting first and then asking for forgiveness, even if that afterwards, right? And this just seems to fall right in line with that. You know, we're going to communicate on this level so that we don't have to have a record of this communication. We don't have to have it documented. And in this incident, you know, I believe that all of them, you know, Radcliffe, Walton, and Vance, they all knew what they were doing. The exception here was they just included one person that shouldn't have been included. So the reason for not investigating is, yeah, you know, if there's an investigation, there's other things in the closet that may come out. Because if you have nothing else to hide, yeah, do the investigation. This one's already out. You already know about this blunder, right? If this is an isolated incident, do the investigation. But if there's other things in that closet, if there's other skeletons, why would you ask? Why would you want an investigation?
Well, if
the president. Public, go ahead, Si.
If the public takes appropriate action in the midterms, when the other administration assumes control, then you can start down that path. It's still early, but you would like to get ahead of it beforehand, not have to wait for votes to force them.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's where we are, and certainly all of us have to be engaged in that process and doing whatever that we can to try to make sure that we shore up to flip the House so that we can have some sort of check on this lawlessness of this administration that is going forth. Now, I know that it is a long shot, but I believe in the David and Goliath story, and we could see something phenomenal happen in Florida, where you have two congressional special elections that's coming up tomorrow, and if either one of those or both of those go the Democrats' way on April the 2nd, Hakeem Jeffries becomes the Speaker of the House. Now, that is a really high, ladder to climb. However, it is tightening up in two what they call ruby red areas of Florida that typically Republicans are sure to win. Republicans are very concerned there. Just last week in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, where Republicans have won that state Senate seat over the past 100 years, that seat just went blue. They have never elected a Democrat in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. That sends a serious signal to Donald Trump and to the Republicans that there is a lot of buyer's remorse for what has taken place and what we see happening, and for good reason. Now, I certainly have tried to do some mental analyzing how we got here in the first place, but that just brings on a certain level of more pain. But we are where we are. The question is, what do we do to mitigate? What do we do to mitigate it from getting worse? Because it seems that every day that we wake up to the incompetence that we all had the warning signs to.
Yes.
There were all kinds of warning signs. Here you have an admitted alcoholic, or certainly an admitted person who abuses alcohol, who says that he is not going to drink on the job. How in the world is that accepted? That you have a person who could be someone who has a problem, and you accept their word that they're not going to do it when they're on the job in such a high level position.
Well, look at the criminal convictions that we have from the commander in chief, right? I mean, if what he thinks it's okay because look at some of the things that he's actually been convicted of, right? So it's
right.
It's like we're all part of the same tribe. We're all part of the same group. So I can see him not having an issue with other people's issue that's within his cabinet. It's more of a kinship than something that I should actually point a finger at. I can justify.
Well, now you two were in the military. I know that you have been having conversations with people about this. What? Because I haven't spoken to anybody who serves in the military. I've never served in the military, but I haven't spoken to a single person who served in the military that did not have a serious reaction to this. And I mean, as in our closing minutes here, just give me in your final comments here, what were your thoughts when you heard this and people that you're having conversations with?
Yeah, it's much of the same stuff that Syron and I have actually discussed. Is how do we and majority of individuals I'm having conversations with are people that have retired, right? People that I serve with, and it's that same level of, man, if this had been one of us, we would not be here to have had this retirement status. And the same question of, why won't they just be accountable? Why won't they just admit to where they are and then provide information of, this is what we've done to secure things going forward? Because we know it's out there, but you can't leave it out there without a resolution to it and then gain still trust and confidence in our troops. That's the same thing everyone, and I'm getting this on both sides, those that are Republicans, those that are Democrats. There's one thing that actually unifies us in the service is that, hey, look, we all have to rely on each other, right? Even more so than we can rely on our commander in chief, because they're sitting up there in the White House and we're out here in the trenches. So on both sides, I haven't had one conversation with anyone that said that this was acceptable. That this was acceptable. You know, some may not have the same alarm theory as I have, and they go to, well, at least no lives were lost, so let's, they're going to fix it. They have a confidence in it being fixed. But everyone has said, at least this should have never gotten to this point. This should have never been a message, a group messaging on this app that even put us in this position in the first place. That is one thing that everyone I've spoken to have actually been in joint lockstep with.
Sorry.
I ditto all of that. I do think, though, it'd be wise for the other side to look at the general sentiment of the population and the people and look at why they voted the way they did. Because if you're not careful, we will find ourselves in 2 years or even the 4 years doing the repeat. And so I do think they got to really look in the mirror and say, what were the policies that they were pushing? Even though it was a lot of good stuff, what was the things that really turned off some of the voters? Because some people decided to go with what their core value was over all the superficial things that, you might have a feeling about the person. So I hope they do look in the mirror on that.
Agree.
Well, I can tell you the juxtaposition between the responses to this, the politicization of this, the Republicans, Democrats, you didn't see that at 9/11. At 9/11, you didn't know who was a Democrat. It didn't matter who was a Republican. We responded.
Yeah.
Everybody responded, right? So it didn't matter. But even the people that you say you've spoken to, Kevin, even some of them were a little bit measured in their response. If this had been, 9/11, regardless of who they were, we were all unified in saying that, this has to be addressed. There was no Republican, Democrat at the time.
Agree.
They didn't have podcasts and they didn't have TikTok, Mark. Now they get benefits from going against the grain. Whatever you say, let me do it against it, get some clicks.
Yeah, but the people, I'm talking about the people in charge.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Hey, gentlemen, I have to sign off. Good chat. Mark, thanks for inviting me. I have to do this last campaign thing before final voting day tomorrow.
All right. We appreciate that, Kevin Dorsey and Cy Smith. Both. Thank you very much for being here. Certainly appreciate it.
Appreciate your shipmate.
All right.
All right. All right, folks, listen, we certainly want to thank Kevin Dorsey and Syron Smith for coming on. This is very serious for those of us who are citizens, and certainly for those of us who do this work and pay attention to the nuances to provide all of us and to provide our public with information. Cannot stress to you the importance and the seriousness of what is taking place. This is more than the national advisor to the president, or Pete Hegseth, the head of the Pentagon. This is more than position. This is more than position. This is about putting and sending a message around the world to people who are planning attacks and thinking of ways that they can attack the United States that will harm men and women and children and lives, people who literally want to do harm, as they did at 9/11. For the president or the thug in chief to take the positions that they have taken is reprehensible. And for those who voted for this, you were sorely misguided. And I certainly hope that this becomes a lesson that you cannot allow for your frustrations to get in the way of better judgment. This decision that the country has made to put this person in office it's quite serious. It's quite serious, and we are going to pay. Okay, so, and we're going to suffer from it. Now, I want to switch gears here a little bit. I want to switch gears, and I want to talk about civic engagement and responsibility. Now, we had, okay, I've got to add something, and I want to hope that I get to it. I want to add something. We had the mayor went to, well, not we, but the mayor of the city of Chicago, Brandon Johnson, who I supported for mayor. I sat down and had conversation with Brandon Johnson 2 weeks before he announced that he was running for mayor. He was on the radio at WCPT. I got in contact with him, and I asked for a meeting with him. I also asked for a meeting with Paul Wallace. Paul Wallace's people did not honor the meeting. They said that they would, but they didn't. But Brandon Johnson did. This was 2 weeks before he announced. But of course, then when they both became the candidate, I had an opportunity to meet with him. Paul Wallace would not. Now, Brandon Johnson made commitments to do something about photo enforcement of red light cameras and speed cameras. When we met, Brandon Johnson, if this was if he would become mayor, and certainly if he decided to run. He had not decided at that moment. Maybe he did, and he just didn't want to say it. But certainly at that moment that we were talking, I met with him at the Chicago Teachers Union building. And we had some discussion about photo enforcement. We had discussions about putting together a real urban planning department so that we have a real comprehensive urban planning plan for redeveloping and bringing in real economic development that would infuse and enrich and stabilize Chicago's south and west sides of Chicago that have been sorely neglected for 40 years. We talked about all of that, advanced manufacturing. I talked about the Golden Triangle that I found out about back in 2015. I shared that information with Lori Lightfoot. Her administration didn't do anything with it. I shared it with Brandon Johnson. They are at least talking about doing some of these things. Now, the question I am asking, the question that is being raised is, can you support a person in public office? In this case, can you support the mayor and still be critical of policies that the mayor is supporting, and certainly policies that the mayor is supporting that he said that he would not support? Can you be critical and challenge the mayor on a policy or policies without being non-supportive of the mayor? Can you support the mayor and still question the mayor? I say that you can. I say that you must always question. You must always be critical of anybody that you support in a public office. You should always be critical. You should always question what they're doing. What they're doing, who is going to benefit in the short run, in the mid-range, and in the long run. We should always be asking questions about public policy, legislation. Today, I still support Brandon Johnson. I support some of the great work, some of the initiatives that they're doing. I do not support him. And I categorically reject the idea that he has taken the hypocritical position that he has taken to support a system that fundamentally does not provide the results of safety that he has signed on to. I was called by the group is called the Alliance Group that organized this so-called listening session that was held at Trinity United Church of Christ on 95th Street this past Sunday. I was called last week, and I was asked to please attend, to come there and be prepared to ask questions. I later found out that they required for you to send the questions in, that your questions were not going to be edited, but they needed to be sent in, and there was a cutoff period. I was never told that. And I had issues with that. However, I still would have sent in the question, but I would have wanted to have the opportunity to present the background in context, to put it in context. But this is not what they had. This is not what they had. It was not what I would call a listening session. I believe that if you are in a public office, certainly if you are in the office as the mayor of the city of Chicago, if you are in the office of the mayor of the city of Chicago, that you should at the very, very least, you should be prepared to answer questions. 2.5 years into your term, you should be prepared to answer questions without having to be prepped on every single question. Because most questions are going to be around policing. Most questions are going to be around economic development. And certainly questions are going to be around things like photo enforcement of red light cameras and speed cameras. Now, our committee, our political action committee, the Citizens to Abolish Red Light Cameras, we're 16 years into this work. I'm the executive director of Citizens to Abolish Red Light Cameras and 10 by 10 to Win. We have been working very tirelessly over the last year. We now have our own internal data analyst who is helping us to analyze and understand the very city's own information, their own numbers, their own traffic crash data. So we're not making up any numbers. We're using their numbers, understanding that information. And boy, have we come to some revelations that largely we already knew, but we certainly are a lot more understanding of them. And we are going to present those numbers to the mayor. We're going to also present those numbers to the public. So you can I am suffering from my sinuses, and I didn't want you all to see me getting myself together. But in a few minutes, I should be okay. But we're going to present that information, and we're going to present that information to the public. We're going to present it to the city. So we've been working very hard at crunching the numbers. And in the weeks next week, I'm going to put some graphics up. I want to show you where they are placing some of these 16 cameras. For instance, they're placing a camera that is on a block that has no relations to the part that the camera is supposed to be, is 1/8 of a mile. Just to give you some basic information, just some little information. Now, I know that when you hear the numbers are going to sound, wow, we have all those numbers. Now, we did a 10-year analysis of all of the crashes in the city of Chicago. 10 years we did. So, and that doesn't necessarily mean that they were all around traffic intersections or even related to speed. So we did a 10-year analysis. This is all from the city's information. So there was a total of a 10-year period. There were 929,000 crashes with injuries in the city of Chicago over a 10-year period. Of those 929,000, there were 4,949 fatalities or injuries. Of the 4,949, 1,680 over a 10-year period, 1,680 over a 10-year period happened within 1/8 of a mile of a school or a park safety zone. Over a 10-year period, 162 cameras, 83 school and park safety zones. We also did the numbers to show what the traffic crash percentage is with respect to the 162 cameras over a 10-year period. So there's 162 cameras that existed in the city of Chicago. And over 10 years, the crash rate, accident rates within 1/8 of a mile is 14.1%. Over a 10-year period, traffic rates have gone up. Crashes have gone up. The 16 new cameras that are going out, the 16 locations where they are putting the cameras, and there has not been any cameras for 10 years, over the same 10 years, you want to know what the traffic crash rate is? 14.2%. A 1/100th of a percent difference. So there's virtually no difference in the traffic crash rates in the 16 areas where there's no cameras and they're going to put cameras over the same 10-year period than they have in all of the 162, 83 locations of cameras in the city of Chicago, which tell you that there is virtually no difference in the traffic crash data in places that they have the cameras and places that they don't. What it signifies and demonstrates to us is that they have this policing for profit system in place for the sole purpose of generating millions and millions of dollars for private interest and putting a tax on everyday working people and poor people without calling it a tax. That's what it is. And it is unconscionable that Brandon Johnson, Mayor Brandon Johnson, could support reparations on one hand and support preying on the same people on the other hand. It's hypocritical. It's disingenuous. It is unjustifiable. And we're going to call the mayor on it because he said he was going to do something about it, and he did not do anything about it. And he reversed course and is putting it on steroids purely because it generates money. So he's okay with preying on poor people because we do know, based on the scientific analysis that was done by ProPublica, that Black communities and poor communities are ticketed at 3 times that of communities on the north side of Chicago. 3 times more than that of communities on the north side of Chicago. We have a whole lot more information that we're going to be sharing and that we're going to be exposing about this system. It is merely a policing for profit scheme. And I would ask all of you to contact your alderman and demand that they rid our city of this policing for profit, for private interest, and that we employ some real traffic patrol safety measures to really deal with the reckless, lawless driving of people who don't care anything about a camera and certainly don't care anything about getting a ticket. But what the city has essentially said is that, look, we're not going to have police officers that are going to be monitoring traffic. We're going to be using our police officers to do more important things like investigate homicides, crime, more violent crime, and crime, violent crime prevention. That's their little tag. And they've essentially said that we are going to defer any type of lawfully, legally, professionally trained peace officer to provide traffic safety, that we are going to enlist a private company and we are going to give them authority to enforce state law, when none of them have gone through the same training that all of our police are required in order to be a peace officer. So we don't know who these people are. We can't talk to them. We can't question them. We have no idea what their expertise are. So we have a system in place that is purely a policing for profit scheme on the public. The data shows that it does not provide traffic safety. I know that some of you are under the illusion that it does, but the data speaks very clearly. It's the city's own information. It is their own data that exposes the truth about these cameras of photo enforcement. It exposes it. And over the next several weeks, I am going to be laying it out for you methodically so that you will know exactly what the numbers are. You can understand it in context, that this placebo of a system that they have in place, that they are, kind of kidding people with saying, look, and they call it child safety zones, right? Because who would argue with a child safety zone? Who would argue with wanting to keep children safe? Who's going to argue with that? Nobody's going to argue with that. But again, it's disingenuous because it's not giving the effect that they say that it is. And that's really not the real reason that they have it, because guess what? We don't have an epidemic of children being struck by cars. We do have a problem of children being struck by bullets. The number one cause of children death today, it's not cars. It's not being run over by cars. It's not cancer. It's not heart attacks. The number one killer of children today are guns. Number one. The number one, the leading cause of death for children today are guns, not cars, not cancer. Guns. But yet we have this over proliferation and emphasis on this system because it generates millions and millions and millions of dollars that private interest is soaking up. Lawyers who get $200 an hour at the administrative hearing, it may be even more than that, whether it be in the city, whether it be in the suburbs. They are raking in the cash. It is a policing for profit scam that we must force the elimination of that scam on the backs of people who can least afford it. So with that said, you can criticize the mayor and still support the mayor. I don't support the mayor on this, and I am going to hold this to the mayor's feet. I'm going to hold his feet to the fire on this. And we're going to push him on it, and we're going to shove the facts right in their face that it cannot be ignored. Now, I want to play some of what was supposed to be the mayor's listening session, but the mayor basically had the opportunity to present some of the work and accomplishments and things that they're working on. But I want to play here is the first, this is the first clip. I'm going to play the entire thing, and hopefully, I think we'll be able to get through it, but I'll play the entire thing, and I want you to listen carefully in this first one, you're going to see that they invite the mayor, and when the mayor comes, there were some agitators, and we need agitators. Again, people demonstrate and protest in different ways. But this is the mayor at Trinity United Church of Christ on yesterday at the listening session that I was asked to be a part of, that I didn't go because I thought it was being more of a dog and pony show. But I did appreciate the mayor giving us an update. Take a look.
Let's welcome our mayor. Oh, wow. Thank you so much. Please be seated. Thank you, Frank, for your leadership and your... Well, thank you for that. Thank you for raising that today. We certainly have had issues with our police department over the years. And since I've been in office, we have been working very hard to ensure that our law enforcement is behaving constitutionally. But I can tell you one thing for sure, under my administration, my commitment to make sure that there is real justice for our people is my top priority. Thank you.
Hello, I will ask that you honor and respect God's sanctuary. I will again ask that you please respect and honor God's sanctuary. As Baba Frank said, there are differences. We acknowledge that. We sincerely acknowledge that. But I ask that you respect and honor God's sanctuary. Okay. We will not be able to go forward. We will not be able to go forward. Again, I will ask that you please honor and respect God's sanctuary. Thank you. Thank you very much. I will again ask that you please honor and respect God's sanctuary. There are questions that will be asked of the mayor relative to police. Please. Thank you. I have two asks of everyone in here. One is that we respect and honor God's sanctuary. This is a place for all. The second is there are people that are recording, and we distinctly said no recording. If you do not want to be removed, please stop recording. Now let's take care of the business that we said we were going to do. There's going to be questions. All the questions are not the most favorable, let's say, if you will, but the questions have to be asked. So let's go by the process. Amen? Thank you.
Well, thank you all again for your patience today. I do want to recognize that there's a great deal of frustration and animus that exists in this city for a very long time. The truth of the matter is that police brutality is something that has plagued our city, and too many of our folks have been criminalized because of their blackness or because of their addiction. And I know that from a very personal note of having brothers who have dealt with untreated trauma and have been criminalized, and one of whom died addicted and unhoused. The frustration that is being expressed today is one that we have held for generations. But I can tell you one thing for sure, that though we've inherited a mess, we're going to clean it up, and we're going to do that together. I do recognize that expectations for a black man are quite profound. I embrace those expectations. Being raised by one, I'm certainly not intimidated by a moment where our people are expressing their hurt and their pain. Now listen, whether you cause the pain or not, it is our collective responsibility to help make sure that there is a balm and that we heal the deep, deep, profound pain that our people have experienced, not just since police brutality in this city, but since we were brought over on the Ma'afa, through the Ma'afa, on the slave ships. Our people have been tortured and tormented and brutalized and handcuffed for a very long time.
All right. So that was part one. Let's go to part two. I want to make sure that we get all of this in. Now, I think it's very appropriate for people to demonstrate and to voice their concerns. Now, look, let me say this. I am a follower and pursuer of Christ. known as a Christian. I don't really call myself a Christian, but I'm a pursuer of Christ. And I love the church of Christ. A building is not the church. It is where we go to fellowship. Those of us who are pursuers and followers of Christ. I have been involved because my mother demanded it and made certain of it, and I'm so grateful today that she did it, even when I had no idea what she was doing and when I was completely uninterested as a child. I'm grateful for her planting that foundation and that seed. And I respect the fellowship and the opportunity to fellowship and to learn and to share with other people of the faith. But I don't hold any worship in brick and mortar. Respect for the church, the facilities. But let me say this. And I am a admirer of Trinity United Church of Christ, even thinking about being a member there. I go to many of the worship services there. I've had the opportunity to sit and meet with Pastor Moss and people like Kevin and other people there that are part of the church and the social justice ministry there. When you invite a public official, not a politician, when you invite a public official and you invite the public to engage, exchange with the public official, be very, very careful of taking away or appearing to try and take away anyone's right to demonstrate, to protest, or to advocate. I would not call what those people were doing a disrespect for God's house. If that is not something that you agree with, I would suggest that you do not hold public meetings with public officials in your sanctuary. Because I think that people who are invited there, they may be people who are not Christians. They may be people who have no faith commitment whatsoever. They weren't coming there to participate in any type of faith-based services. They were coming to engage the public representative known as the mayor of the city of Chicago. Their voices should not be silenced. And I'm glad that they had the opportunity to express what their concerns were to the mayor and hopefully the mayor's people, and hopefully they took it in and will address, and maybe they are addressing whatever those concerns are. I heard some people talk about the police officer that is out on the streets that killed, murdered Laquan McDonald. All of us are horrified and angry about that. That's not the mayor's fault. We can certainly say we take exception with the court for showing a great disdain and disrespect for Laquan McDonald, his family, and certainly for the rest of our community. It showed great contempt, in my opinion. All right, let's go to, let's see, this is clip 2. Now, the mayor said some great things. He put forth some great things, and we're going to hold them to this. Now, some of the things that you're going to hear the mayor talk about are things that I presented to the mayor about advanced manufacturing, bringing industry to the south and west sides of Chicago. We cannot talk about doing economic development. We can't talk about putting in, mom and pop stores and businesses if we don't have a robust, strong workforce. You have to have a workforce of people who have the discretionary income to be able to support the ma and pop businesses in our communities. When you employ more people and you increase people's ability to earn and to provide for themselves, to buy homes, to buy cars, to take their family on vacation, to take their family out to a movie or a dinner, to be able to shop in our communities, that creates opportunities for people to open businesses and employ more people. But you have to have people who have the wherewithal to support their businesses. That means that you have to have industry to be able to bring the big industries here, that they can hire thousands of people and pay them good wages to produce their products so that they can produce them on the market and out in the world, so that everybody benefits. So the companies make money and the people who are helping the companies make money earn a good living. And it becomes a mushroom that blossoms. The more people working, more opportunity for businesses, more opportunities for business to establish in the communities, and people can spend and support their businesses right in their own community and leave their tax dollars right in the communities where we live. In the 50s, 60s, and 70s, 70% of all Black employment was in labor, manufacturing in the city of Chicago. We have to bring back industry in order for us to fortify the foundation of our communities. We have these high rates of unemployment between Black males between 18 to 25. We will not do that by building a Chick-fil-A or a Dunkin' Donut or McDonald's. There has to be industry. The U.S. Steel site, that is the planning development for the Compu lab out there, is a start to that. If we really focused on bringing industry back to the south and west side of Chicago for the next 10 years, we could transform the south and west sides of Chicago. Here is the second phase of the mayor's speech.
But I will say this, we have certainly rocked the world in Chicago. Chicago is not necessarily known for its earthquakes, but I can tell you this, there was generational rainfall and flooding and smoke coming in from the wildfires in Canada. And that happened at the very onset of my administration, of which my wife reminded me that if the locusts come, you might want to repent, brother. Now, I have repented, by the way, and I do acknowledge the Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, as my personal Savior. And that is what provides me with the humility that is needed in this moment. You know, if you ask our young people and our organizers, our teachers, if you ask our service workers, if you ask the humble and the hardworking people in Chicago what they experienced April 4th, 2023, when I was elected, I know that they will tell you emphatically that the earth and the ground did shift here in Chicago. Because there was a clear choice. It came down to electing a new, vibrant hope for this city, or we could subject people more to school closings and privatization, shuttered mental health clinics, more jobs leaving Chicago, more disinvestment, more communities being left behind, more of the same old, same old. It was government of, by, and for the wealthy and the well-connected, a government that responded to the interests of lawyers and bankers and investors and only to certain developers. It was a government that responded to the financial advisors and school privatizers and billionaires. It was a government that responded to international corporations. But now we have a government that is for the people and by the people for the first time in 40 years. You see, Chicagoans took a chance. They decided to choose government that would respond to the workers, to everyday people, dishwashers and bus drivers and educators, everyday people in our city. And that meant instead of closing our neighborhood schools or privatizing them, we would invest in our schools. We would turn them into sustainable community schools and make the school the center of an entire community. And it meant investing in our public health, investing in our young people, investing in affordable housing, and investing in all of Chicago. And so I'm here today to give you an update on what we've done so far. We have more women running departments than ever before in the history of Chicago. We have more black and brown folks running government, more than we've ever experienced in the history of Chicago. And so after 2 years, we put forth a bold, very progressive black agenda that will respond to the interests of all of Chicagoans. And first of all, we look at our city today and we know that investments are up. And we know that investments are up because we put our own eyes on those who have been marginalized in this city. And so now you're seeing and hearing the sound of transformation, particularly for people who live on the west and south side of Chicago. In fact, you're hearing so much sound in construction that I'm getting complaints that there are too many construction jobs that are happening at the same time. Trucks and jackhammers at 6 o'clock in the morning and streets being blocked off. And I know how annoying it is. But that's the sound of rebuilding a Chicago that works for the people of Chicago. That's the sound of us reopening a free mental health clinic on the far south side of the city of Chicago, that our people can get the treatment that they deserve regardless of their ability to pay. That's the sound of 30,000 lead pipes being replaced so that our people can finally get clean water in their homes. It's the sound of us paving. It's the sound of us paving our streets and repairing our sidewalks. It's the sound of building the new turf field at Julian High School. It's the sound of Grace Manor affordable apartment complex on the west side of Chicago and North Lawndale. It's the sound of a new community health hub being built in Austin. That's the sound that we're hearing across the city of Chicago. It's the sound of a $1.25 billion bond investment, the largest bond investment for economic development, for housing and economic development in the history of Chicago. That means lower rents and more jobs. That's the sound that we are experiencing and feeling in Chicago. And I know you can hear that sound. It's the sound of $830 million for infrastructure. Because there was a woman who said to me, a black woman, and black women are so brutally honest. She said, Mayor, you either going to fix these streets or you're going to fix my car. So I decided to put forth $830 million to repave our streets, fix our potholes, fix our crumbling bridges, and making sure that we have adequate lighting throughout our city. It's also a tremendous honor to announce the 1901 project on the west side of Chicago. It's a $7 billion investment on the west side to build housing, retail space, and green space. $5 billion for Cy Quantum on the southeast side of Chicago, where the steel mills once were there. And when that community was left for dead, we put forth a $5 billion investment for new technology that has the ability to draw $20 billion of new investments on the southeast side of Chicago. That's the sound of investment for the people of this amazing city. Jobs are back. Our neighborhoods are back. The sound of our city is coming back. And that sounds good to me. It really does. That's just a snapshot, though, you all. Our investments are up. When I came into office, we heard the cries of the workers. It's James chapter 5. Woe unto the rich who deny wages to the workers. The Bible says that I hear their cries. And when the workers in this city said they needed a day off, I did the righteous thing. I gave them 10.
And we have a few minutes for I'm going to go right into the closing of the clip.
That's 1.2 million workers that have 10 paid days off. We also abolished the sub-minimum wage, vestiges of slavery, where our people coming out of slavery were asked to work beneath the minimum wage. Well, we abolished that, and 60,000 plus workers who work in our restaurants will receive raised wages every single year until they get to the minimum wage, on top of their tips. And so we've also settled contracts with the police department, our park district workers. Our park district workers experienced the highest raise that they've ever experienced since they have been park district workers. 37,000 new construction jobs. That means workers' rights are up and exploitation is down. Now, look, I'm careful to say something too soon, but we're really close, you all, for the first time in 15 years, to get a teacher's contract without a strike or a strike vote. When I was running for office, they said it would be a liability, but it sounds like to me that no other mayor could have brought Chicago Public Schools, the Board of Education, the mayor's office, and the CTU together to the table to make sure that our children get exactly what they deserve, which is a fully funded, well-rounded education. We're building more homes as well, 4,000 new affordable homes, 1,800 that are under construction, almost 4,600 in the next 18 months. We also passed the Cut the Tape initiative, getting bureaucracy out of the way so that we can move business through the city of Chicago faster. In 2024, you all, through our Planning Commission for Development, $11 billion of new investment, more investment in 2024 than we had in 2022 and 23 combined, and $11 billion last year. It's barely April, the end of March, we're already at $8 billion of new investments this year. We're building a better, stronger, and a much safer Chicago. Now, in closing, I'm grateful that we had some folks provocating why we need more mental and behavioral health services. Since Mayor here in Washington, every single administration has cut mental health services. Not only did I stand alongside of the hunger strikers and became a hunger striker myself, to make sure that we can have a school on the south side of Chicago where children can attend. And now here we are a decade later when an administration gave up on that school. That school just produced champions because Dyett High School, 2A boys basketball varsity team, brought home a championship. It left that community for dead, but we resurrected through our organizing. And there were also individuals who chained themselves to mental health clinics because you had administrations that had a tremendous amount of animus towards our public accommodations. Not only did we reopen the mental health clinic on the far south side of Chicago, we expanded mental health services on the lower west side, the Pilsen Clinic, Legler Library on the west side of Chicago, all offering mental health and behavioral health services. The first mayor since Mayor here in Washington to invest in public mental health services. 200 more detectives, more technology to make sure that our law enforcement have all the tools that we need. And in closing, this is not about me. This is about the people of this city. Now, I know some folks want to make it about me, but I understand something. In the African tradition, you can tell a lot about a community based upon how the children are experiencing that community. In fact, if I understand, I'm not a theologian, so correct me if I'm wrong, Pastor. But on the continent, it was very common for us to greet one another with the question, how are the children? And if the children aren't well, then we know that we haven't done our part. Well, since I've been in office, I've made sure that our young people are seen and valued and heard, and to make sure that they can find their purpose. 45% increase in youth employment. 29,000 jobs are available for our young people this summer. A 45% increase. And so in other words, you all, as shootings continue to go down and youth employment goes up, as homicides go down and apprenticeships go up, as robberies go down and clearance rates go up, as despair goes down and the hope that continues to bubble continues to go up, we need to make sure that we continue to move in the direction of promise and prosperity. The sugarcoating that many people have done for too long is over. It doesn't mean that we've done everything right. It just simply means that we're doing everything that we can to make sure we get it right. So no longer are we going to stand and watch the interests of the wealthy and billionaires and the ruling class continue to dictate how we govern. We're going to make sure that we create more job opportunities, that we provide more mental and behavioral healthcare services, that we invest in our education system, and that we ensure that good paying jobs and time off becomes the regular form of governance. And we're going to do that together. So I'm looking forward to the conversation that we will have today, because I make one thing very clear, that the individual that is behaving in one of the most iniquitous acts of government, that is working to intimidate us, to get us to disrupt the evolution of our democracy, to get us to surrender our humanity, no matter what the president says or does, we will continue to move to build a better, stronger, safer Chicago, an inclusive economy that works for everyone. God bless you all. Thank you very much.
All right, that was Mayor Brandon Johnson at the Trinity United Church of Christ yesterday. They had a listening session. I did not attend the listening session because, again, I did not agree with the format. However, there was some good information in that speech, and I wanted to get a copy of that speech. And certainly I am going to hold on to that speech, and I will remind us from time to time. Now, let me just say in the closing moments, number one, I want to remind you to please go to our new Facebook page, the People's Show's Facebook page, and follow us there. We want to get our audience up there, and certainly we are going to increase. We now have a social media person who's going to be helping me with the program and getting more participants out there. So please go there. If you have not, go and register on YouTube at the YouTube channel, Mark Wallace, The People Show there. And you can go on several of the other Facebook pages. But thank you all very much. I want to thank intellectualradio.com and Earl Winfrey for allowing for us to have this platform, access to this platform every Monday night. We are going to be working hard to bring you stronger and better content of information so that you are empowered, you are informed with real information that we are not getting every day, and that you don't get, and that you in many respects don't have a lot of time to do that. But we're going to be continuing to hold the mayor accountable, raising questions. The mayor talked about developing and that $5 billion investment out at the southeast side at the OUS Steel site that I started working with Sandy Jackson back in 2005 with the McCaffrey Development Group, where we had the Lakeside development, where there's going to be over 1 million square feet of retail space. We had Macy's and Cheesecake Factory. We're going to build 15,000 new homes there, and bringing in other industries, and Black businesses were being developed to participate in that development. And he announced that investment. That is something that we have been advocating for. We want to see that comes to fruition, but we need to see more of that on the south and west sides of Chicago. We need industry, bringing thousands and thousands of jobs for Black people on the south and west sides of Chicago that will create opportunities for small businesses to start, grow, and flourish. All right. Thank you all for tuning in to this Monday night edition of the People Show. I want to thank my guests, Kevin Dorsey and Syron Smith, for coming on at the top of the program. I want you all have a great week, and I'll see you right back here next Monday night for another edition of the People Show on intellectualradio.com, Instagram, Facebook, and on YouTube. Good night.